The Hirogen ripped screaming human slaves from stasis pods, their vicious maws drooling at the thought of fresh meat. But what happened next would make them the ones screaming. Captain John Wright took a swig of whiskey from his flask, the burn helping dull old war wounds. The grizzled Terran Defense Fleet veteran looked over the squad of fresh-faced recruits aboard the TDS Indomitable. Most weren't even born when the Hirogen War started. Wright gripped the flask. "Listen up, rookies. You heard the stories of humanity becoming top dog in the galaxy, but you don't know the real history of how we got here. How close we came to getting wiped out or turned into cattle." 2257. World War III left Earth in ruins. Governments collapsed. Billions died. We were sitting ducks when the Hirogen invaded. Those warmonger aliens had enslaved half the damn galaxy under their boot. Nobody could stop their conquest. Hundreds of worlds whispered their name in fear. Then they went after a rebuilding Earth for easy pickings. Wright grunted. Big mistake, huge. See, the Hirogen thought they could stomp in and leash up humans as slaves. Didn't expect us to fight back so hard. We hit them with everything. Rockets, railguns. Hell, miners even jury-rigged laser drills into weapons. Hacked together junk and spit. But when our women and children were on the chopping block, we kicked alien ass all the same. The Hirogen invasion was the worst war in human history. Started on Earth, spread to Luna, Mars, the Jovian moons. If we lost, humanity was finished. Every man, woman, and child would be cattle. But if we could hold the line and gut those alien bastards, it'd change everything. Wright gestured to the vast expanse of space out the window, filled with Earth warships. I was there from day one. Let me tell you the real story. The story of how humans told the galaxy's biggest bullies to go fuck themselves. Wright whistles as he looks each recruit dead in the eye. The Battle of Proxima Centauri. The day everything changed. He leans back. Our fleet was getting decimated. The Hirogen ships tore through ours like tissue paper. But we had a trick up our sleeve. The Normandy. The recruits nod, having heard tales of the legendary stealth ship. Wright smiles. EDI, the Normandy's AI, was the real hero. She hacked into the Ravagers' systems, disabled their weapons, gave us an opening. He strokes his chin. I handpicked a dozen men for a boarding mission. The best Earth had to offer. We snuck aboard, but the Hirogen were waiting. It was a goddamn massacre. Wright's eyes go distant. We fought deck by deck. Hirogen hunters came at us from all sides. I lost 6 good soldiers getting to the bridge, but we made it. And there he was, Murloc, the Hirogen commander himself. The recruits hold their breath. Wright flexes his hands. Murloc was a beast, towered over me, all muscle. He bellowed a challenge, Hirogen custom, said he'd blow the core and take us all with him if I refused. But I had a trick, used the ship's gravity controls, threw him off balance, gave me an opening. Wright mimes a rapid stabbing motion at his own throat, buried my knife in his neck. Murloc went down gurgling. I stood over him as he bled out on the deck. I asked him before he died why the Hirogen attacked Earth, and you know what that ugly bastard said to me? The recruits shake their heads, utterly captivated. Wright's voice goes cold. He said they feared us, humans. We scared them enough to launch a goddamn invasion. The recruits shift uncomfortably, processing the revelation. Wright lets the weight of it hang in the air. A damn machine race, Vielox they called themselves, wiped out the Hirogen homeworld like it was nothing, chased the bastards across the galaxy as they ran with their tails between their legs. And we were next on the menu. Wright takes another pull from his flask, savoring the burn. Fleet Command pieced it together from data we salvaged on Havarax. The Vielox were on a mission to cleanse the galaxy of organic life. Anything that wasn't machine, they aimed to destroy. He shakes his head. Hirogen thought they could use Earth as a shield, a buffer between them and the Vielox. They didn't count on us fighting back so hard. By the time we beat them, the Vielox were already nipping at their heels. The recruit raises a hand tentatively. So, what happened? How did we beat the Vielox if they destroyed the Hirogen so easily? Wright chuckles darkly. We almost didn't, kid. I ain't gonna sugarcoat it. Hirogen damn near softened us up for the slaughter. We were still licking our wounds from beating them back when the Velox hit us. He leans forward, eyes hard. I saw the first Velox ships with my own eyes. They looked like something out of a nightmare. All black metal and sharp edges. No viewports, no life signs. Just death in a can. Wright shudders at the memory. We threw everything we had at them. Nukes, plasma cannons, damn near emptied our arsenals, barely scratched their hulls. They carved through our defenses like a hot knife through butter. We were this close to losing everything. Earth, the colonies, the whole shebang. Velox had us against the wall, and they knew it. But then we caught a break. A slim one, but a break all the same. Wright takes a deep breath. The memories of that fateful encounter still fresh in his mind. We received the distress call from the Zentari freighter, the Celestial Mercy, while patrolling the edges of the Halcyon Nebula. Captain Zara Valen, the finest officer I ever served with, didn't hesitate for a second. She ordered our ship, the TDS Retribution, to set a course for the freighter's last known coordinates. The recruits lean forward, hanging on every word as Wright continues. When we dropped out of warp, the sight that greeted us was straight out of a nightmare. The Celestial Mercy was drifting, its hull breached in a dozen places. Bodies floated in the void, frozen in silent screams. Wright's hands clench into fists. We boarded the freighter, hoping against hope to find survivors, but what we found... He shakes his head. The Velox had been there first. They'd slaughtered the Zentari crew, but not before changing them. We found corpses fused with metal, their limbs replaced with grotesque mechanical appendages. It was like something out of a horror vid. One of the recruits, a young woman with fiery red hair, speaks up. What did you do, sir? Wright's jaw tightens. We did what we had to. We set charges on the freighter's reactor and got the hell out of there. But the Velox weren't done with us. A dozen of their ships appeared out of nowhere, swarming the Retribution like locusts. He runs a hand over his face, the exhaustion of the memory evident. It was a slaughter. Our weapons were useless against their advanced shielding. They tore through our hull like it was made of paper. We lost half the crew in the first 5 minutes. The recruits are silent, the weight of Wright's words hanging heavy in the air. But then, Wright says, a glint of something like hope in his eyes, something incredible happened. A fleet of ships, unlike anything we'd ever seen, dropped out of warp right on top of the Velox. They were sleek, almost ethereal, and they moved like nothing I've ever seen. The Velox didn't stand a chance. He leans back in his chair, a wry smile on his lips. That was our first encounter with the Arcturians. They saved our asses that day, but it wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts. They needed something from us, something they were willing to go to war with the Velox to get. Wright's expression turns grim. They wanted our DNA, said they needed it to create a new kind of soldier, one that could stand toe-to-toe with the Velox and come out on top. They called them the Chimera. He shakes his head. I didn't like it, messing with genetics, playing God. It never ends well. But what choice did we have? The Velox were winning, and we were running out of options. So, we made the deal. And may God have mercy on our souls for it. Wright grimaces, the memories of his transformation still vivid. The Arcturians weren't gentle. They strapped us into these pods, injected us with their nanites. I felt like my blood was on fire as they rewrote me from the inside out. He clenches his fist, servos whirring beneath the skin. When I emerged, I was faster, stronger. I could process tactical data in an instant, see in spectrums no human eye could perceive. The perfect soldier, they said. The recruits murmur, a mix of awe and unease. One pipes up. But, sir, wasn't there a risk messing with human genetics like that? Wright nods gravely. More than a risk. We'd made a deal with the devil and he was about to collect. With the Nexus, we hit the Velox hard, raided their shipyards, sabotaged their factories. For a while it seemed like we might just win. His expression clouds. But the Velox, they learned fast, too fast. They captured a Nexus strike team, tore them apart to see what made them tick. Wright's voice drops to a haunted whisper, and then they started making their own. Velox Nexus hybrids, just as strong and twice as vicious. Suddenly, we weren't just fighting machines. We were fighting ourselves. He shakes his head, disgust etched in every line. Imagine seeing your own face staring back at you, but twisted, wrong. That's what it was like, fighting those things. Like a nightmare you can't wake up from. The recruits shift uneasily, the horror of Wright's words sinking in. We were losing ground, losing hope. The Arcturians had no answer for the hybrids, but we did. Humanity's last desperate gamble. A secret even our allies didn't know. Wright leans forward, his augmented eyes gleaming. Deep in the heart of our territory, our scientists had been working on something that could change everything. A weapon to end the war once and for all. He smiles, a thin, razor-sharp thing. And it was about damn time we used it. Wright's eyes flash with intensity as he recalls the daring mission. We knew the data hub would be crawling with Veolox. Their security was tighter than a Tarkesian's asshole, but we had a few tricks up our sleeve. He taps a few buttons on the holographic display, bringing up schematics of a sleek black ship. The Phantom Protocol needed to be delivered directly into the heart of the Veolox network, so we had the eggheads cook up a special delivery system. Wright grins. A ship that could pass for one of their own. Cloaking tech, fake Veolox signatures, the works. It was a work of art. He zooms in on the schematic, highlighting a small compartment. That's where we hid the payload, a single data chip no bigger than my thumbnail, but it carried the hopes of humanity. Wright's expression turns somber. We knew we wouldn't all make it back. The plan was to get in, plug the chip into the central data core, and get the hell out. But the Veolox, they were waiting for us. His fists clench. It was an ambush. They knew we were coming. The second we docked, they swarmed us, Nexus warriors, dozens of them. It was like fighting a tide of liquid metal. Wright's voice drops to a whisper. We fought our way to the core inch by bloody inch. I watched my team fall one by one. Barnes, Takeda, Riggs, all of them, torn apart by those metal monstrosities. He takes a shuddering breath. In the end, it was just me and Davis. We made it to the core, but David, he took a blast meant for me. Gave me the opening I needed to slot the chip. Wright's eyes glisten with unshed tears. As the Phantom Protocol uploaded the Veolox, they screamed, a horrible mechanical wailing that echoed through the station. They started attacking each other, tearing into their own like rabid dogs. He shakes his head. It was chaos, pure, unbridled chaos. I dragged Davis back to the ship, but he didn't make it. Bled out in my arms just as we cleared the station. Wright looks up, his gaze haunted. I watched from the view screen as the Veolox tore themselves apart, their ships turning on each other, blasting each other into oblivion. It was like watching a snake eat its own tail. He sighs heavily. The Phantom Protocol worked. It crippled the Veolox, shattered their unity, but the cost, God, the cost. I lost everyone. Everyone I ever cared about, gone in a blink. Wright falls silent, the weight of the memory bearing down on him. The recruits sit in stunned silence, processing the magnitude of his sacrifice. After a long moment, Wright speaks again, his voice rough with emotion. That battle turned the tide, but it didn't end the war. The Veolox were weakened, but not defeated. They adapted to the Phantom Protocol, found ways to counter it, and they came back at us with a vengeance. Wright leans forward, his gaze intense. And that's where you come in, rookies. You're the next generation, the inheritors of this fight. You'll take up the mantle and carry on where we left off. He stands, towering over the recruits. But don't think for a second it'll be easy. The Veolox are still out there, plotting, scheming, and they've got a new trick up their sleeve, something worse than anything we've seen before. Wright's lips curl into a snarl. They call it the Nexus Directive, a plan to... The recruits sit in stunned silence as Wright's words sink in, the weight of his loss palpable in the air. Wright's fists clench, his augmented knuckles creaking with the strain. New Harmony was a slaughter. The Veolox descended like a plague of locusts, their ships darkening the sky. I can still hear the screams, smell the acrid stench of burning homes and flesh. Wright's voice trembles, raw with emotion. I sprinted through the chaos, my sister's house in sight. Laser fire stitched the ground at my feet, searing the earth. I kicked in the door, calling out for Sarah and the kids. He squeezes his eyes shut, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. I found them in the kitchen, huddled in terror. Sarah was clutching little Timmy and Emma, shielding them with her body. I tried to get them to the evac shuttles, but the Velox were already swarming the landing pads. Wright's voice drops to a haunted whisper. We almost made it. Almost. But a Velox hunter burst through the wall, all gleaming metal and cruel angles. It leveled its cannon at us, and I couldn't shield them all. He takes a shuddering breath, his hands shaking. Sarah pushed the kids towards me, and the Velox fired. The blast took her in the chest, burning clean through. She crumpled, blood soaking the kitchen tiles. Wright's voice hardens, edges sharp as a razor. I don't remember much after that. I know I got Timmy and Emma to a shuttle. I know I went back for Sarah's body. I remember digging 3 graves with my bare hands, the soil stained with my family's blood. He looks up, eyes blazing with an intensity that makes the recruits flinch. I went back to the war, but I was a different man. The rage, the grief, it consumed me. I threw myself into every battle, every mission, not caring if I lived or died. Wright leans forward, his gaze boring into the recruits. But I wasn't alone. New Harmony was a turning point. Across every colony, every ship, every outpost, humanity united in their fury. The Velox had taken too much, pushed us too far. He stands, his augmented form unfolding with a whir of servos. The Alliance committed everything to a final offensive. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we had left. We set our sights on the heart of the Velox Empire, their homeworld. Wright's lips curl into a snarl. It was to be the battle to end all battles, a reckoning millions of years in the making. We knew many of us wouldn't come back. But it didn't matter. All that mattered was making the machines pay, no matter the cost. He turns to the viewport, the stars cold and unblinking. I led the charge, 1,000 Nexus warriors at my back. We hit their defenses like a tidal wave, crashing against a cliff of metal and fire. The Velox fought with a ferocity I'd never seen, like the very universe itself had taken up arms against us. Wright's voice drops to a haunted whisper as he describes the Reavers. They were abominations, a twisted fusion of flesh and metal. The Velox had taken captured humans and Nexus warriors and changed them, turned them into something monstrous. The recruits shudder, the horror of Wright's words sinking in. The Reavers were fast, strong, and utterly without mercy. They tore through our ranks like tissue paper, their claws rending flesh and their jaws dripping with blood. We fought back with everything we had, but it was like trying to hold back the tide. Wright's eyes go distant, lost in the memory. I saw my friends, my brothers and sisters in arms, ripped apart before my eyes. I heard their screams, smelled the coppery tang of their blood on the air. It was a nightmare, made real. He takes a shuddering breath, his hands clenching into fists. We were outnumbered and outgunned, but we couldn't give up. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. If we failed, the Velox would spread like a cancer, consuming everything in their path. Wright looks up, his gaze hardening. So we fought. We fought with every ounce of strength and every shred of will we had left. We fought for our fallen comrades, for the billions of lives counting on us, for the future of every sentient species in the universe. He leans forward, his voice low and intense. And in the end, we won. We paid a terrible price, but we won. The central nexus was destroyed, the Velox's manufacturing capabilities crippled. Without the ability to replenish their numbers, they were finally vulnerable. Wright sits back, his eyes distant. The war didn't end there, of course. The Velox fought on, desperate and vicious, but we had struck a mortal blow, and they knew it. It was only a matter of time. He focuses on the recruits once more, his gaze piercing. But the scars of that final battle will never fade. The things I saw, the horrors I endured, they haunt me still. The Reavers, in particular. He leans forward, his eyes boring into the recruits. That's why you're here, why we're telling you this story. Because the war isn't over, not really. The Velox may be gone, but their legacy remains. And it's up to you, the next generation, to finish what we started. Wright stands, his augmented form unfolding with a whir of servos. But that's a story for another time. For now, just remember this. When you're out there, in the void, and you hear a scratching at the hull, a whisper in the dark, run. Run and pray they don't find you. He turns to the viewport, the stars cold and unblinking. Because if they do... The recruits lean forward, hanging on Wright's every word. There's you'll wish you'd never been born. Wright's hands shake as he grips the armrests of his chair, the memories of the Reavers still fresh in his mind. They were abominations, a perversion of everything human. The Velox had taken our own people, our brothers and sisters in arms, and twisted them into something monstrous. He shudders, his eyes distant. The Reavers moved with an unnatural speed, their limbs a blur of metal and flesh. They leaped and bounded across the battlefield, shrugging off wounds that would have killed a normal man 10 times over. Wright's voice drops to a hoarse whisper. I saw one take a plasma bolt to the chest, saw the flesh melt away to reveal the gleaming metal beneath, but it didn't stop, didn't even slow down. It just kept coming, its jaws snapping, its claws tearing through armor like paper. He takes a shaky breath, his hands clenching into fists. We fought with everything we had, every weapon, every tactic, but it was like trying to hold back the tide with a broom. They just kept coming, an endless wave of horror and death. Wright's eyes harden, a flicker of the old soldier's resolve. I knew we couldn't win, not like this, so I made the call. I ordered my team to fall back, to get to the extraction point. I would stay behind, buy them the time they needed. He laughs, a short, bitter bark. They argued, of course, stubborn bastards, every one of them. But I was their commander, and they knew the score. They knew someone had to stay behind. Wright's voice grows distant, his gaze unfocused. I don't remember much after that. It's all a blur of blood and screams and flashing metal. I remember the feel of my blade biting into flesh, the kick of my plasma rifle against my shoulder. I remember the stench of burnt meat and spilled blood. He rubs a hand over his face, his fingers tracing the lines of old scars. I should have died there amid the corpses of the monsters I had slain. I was ready for it, ready to join my sister in whatever comes after. But then a miracle. The roar of engines, the staccato bark of heavy weapons. His team, the ones he had ordered to leave him, coming back. They came out of the sky like avenging angels, all fire and fury. They laid down a suppressing barrage, the heavy rounds tearing through the Reavers like they were made of tissue paper. A Reaver leaps at Wright, its claws extended, its mouth open in a silent scream. But a burst of fire from the dropship tears it in half, sending its lifeless body tumbling to the ground. I ran then, ran like I've never run before. I could feel the heat of the dropship's engines at my back, could hear the Reavers shrieking in rage and pain behind me. Wright's hand closes around a lowered cargo ramp, and he's hauled inside, his team's hands on his arms, his back, pulling him to safety. We left that cursed place behind, the dropship straining to climb out of the atmosphere, and as I watched the Velox homeworld recede into the distance, I knew that no matter the cost, we had won. But the scars remain, etched into his flesh, his mind, his very soul. The war had ended, but for Wright and those like him, the battle would never be over. We gave everything to stop the Velox, to save our species. And in the end we succeeded, but the price... The price was almost too high to bear. Wright falls silent, his gaze distant, lost in the memories of a war that had cost him everything. The recruits shift uncomfortably, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. One of them, a young man with eager eyes, leans forward. But sir, we won. We beat the Velox. Doesn't that make it all worth it? Wright's eyes snap to the recruit, his gaze hard. Worth it? Was it worth the billions of lives lost, the worlds burned to ash, the families torn apart? He stands, his augmented body unfolding from the chair. You think this is a game, boy? You think war is something to be celebrated? The recruit shrinks back, his face pale. No, sir, I just meant... Wright cuts him off with a wave of his hand. I know what you meant, and I understand. When you're young, when you haven't seen the things I've seen, it's easy to think of war as something glorious, something noble. He steps forward, his eyes boring into the recruit. "But there's nothing glorious about war, nothing noble. It's just pain and suffering and death. And those who survive, those who come out the other side." Wright taps a finger against his temple. "We carry the scars with us always. The faces of the dead, the screams of the dying. They haunt us, every waking moment, every restless dream." He turns away, his shoulders slumping. "So no, boy, it wasn't worth it. Nothing is worth the price we paid." The recruit swallows hard, his eyes wide. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean—" Wright sighs, the anger draining from him. "I know you didn't. And I'm sorry for snapping at you. It's just the memories, they're still raw, even after all these years." He turns back to the group, his expression serious. "But that's why I'm telling you this story, why I'm sharing these memories, painful as they are. Because you need to understand what we fought for, what we sacrificed." Wright's voice drops to a whisper. "And you need to be ready, because the war may be over, but the fight—" He locks eyes with each recruit in turn. "The fight is never truly done." Wright's eyes flash with a fervor as he recalls the early days of the Reaver War. "At first, we didn't understand what we were facing. Reports came in of isolated attacks, remote colonies going dark. We thought it was just the aftermath of the Velox collapse, warlords and pirates seizing opportunity. How wrong we were." He activates a holographic display, images of twisted, nightmarish forms flickering to life. Reavers striking without warning, leaving no survivors, only gruesome scenes of slaughter and mutation, bodies warped beyond recognition. The recruits recoil at the horrific visuals. Wright's face is grim, the light casting harsh shadows across his features. "We mounted expeditions, sent recon teams to investigate. Few returned. Those that did spoke of horrors that defied comprehension. Nests pulsing with vile life, Reavers emerging from the broken husks of their victims, stronger, faster, smarter." He clenches his fists, servos whirring. It wasn't just humans they targeted. Any sentient life was fair game. They swept through the galaxy like a plague, leaving broken worlds and shattered civilizations in their wake. Wright zooms out the hologram, a galaxy map mottled with angry red splotches. "We fought back, marshaled our forces, but it was like fighting a hydra. Cut off one head, two more take its place. They adapted to our strategies, turned our weapons against us." He points to a swirling maelstrom on the map's edge. "Here, the Veraxis Nebula. We cornered a Reaver hive, pounded it with everything we had, thought we'd scored a decisive victory. Then the reports came in." Wright's voice drops to a haunted whisper. "Reaver ships, diving into stars, emerging changed, empowered. An armada of nightmares, spewing from the nebula like angry hornets. They shrugged off our attacks, carved through our defenses like they were nothing." He shakes his head. "That was just the beginning. As the war ground on, the Reavers grew bolder, their attacks more vicious. They struck at the heart of human space, leaving no refuge safe." Wright meets the recruit's eyes, his gaze searing. "You want to know what we're fighting for? Look around you, every man, woman and child in the galaxy, their fate rests on us. On you." He slams his fist on the table, the bang making the recruits jump. "The Reavers won't stop. They can't be reasoned with, can't be bargained with. There can be no coexistence, no peace. It's us or them. The war continues until one side is wiped from existence." Wright's voice is hard, unyielding as steel. "That's why you're here. Why humanity needs you, because out there in the dark, the Reavers are waiting, and they're hungry." He leans forward, his presence commanding, intimidating. "So I'll ask you, recruits, are you ready? Ready to stand on the front lines, to stare into the abyss and fight for the survival of our species? Because that's what it will take. Nothing less than your blood, your sweat, your very souls." Wright stands tall, a towering figure of resolve and grit. "I've given my life to this war, lost everything I held dear. But I keep fighting, because I know our cause is just, that as long as one human draws breath, there is hope." His eyes blaze with an intensity that sears the soul. "So what say you, recruits? Will you take up the torch, carry on the fight? Will you be the shield that guards the realms of men, the sword that holds the darkness at bay?" He extends his hand, a gesture of camaraderie, of shared purpose. If so, then welcome to the war. May your aim be true, your heart be strong, and may the gods have mercy on us all. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.